Hello. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. If you are just joining us, we wanted to give a couple minutes to allow time for everyone to get started and to file into the webinar. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And Jackie, would you like to kick it off for us?
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fearless Fundraising, Becoming a Free-to-Breathe Fundraising Rockstar. I'm Jackie Ford. I'm the Development Director for National Events and the Free to Breathe Event Series. It looks like we have a wonderful audience coming together for today's webinar, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us and being interested and excited to learn more about fundraising for Free to Breathe and becoming a fearless and active voice for the lung cancer movement. Fundraising is such an important element of our Free to Breathe events. It's really through the money that's raised at these events that you're helping to transform lives, restore hope, and build the promise of life-saving treatments for each person and family affected by lung cancer. As a fundraiser, you're part of bringing lung cancer into the light and allowing the National Lung Cancer Partnership to put forth our new vision for the next decade. Together, we're going to double lung cancer survival in the next 10 years. This is a vision that we can and will accomplish together. The future is truly brighter and more hopeful now than it ever has been, and it's through the extraordinary fundraising efforts from individuals like yourselves that we will achieve this vision and drive progress so that one day we can all be free to breathe. So I want to thank all of you on the line today for your continued and many of you new engagement with us and for your passion and commitment to doubling lung cancer survival by 2022. With that, I'd like to introduce Molly Fast, an Associate Director with our partner, Event 360. Molly has 10 incredible years of success in event fundraising and is excited to share her knowledge and insight with you today and is looking very forward to building your confidence and enhancing your fundraising toolkit as you look ahead to creating great momentum with your Free to Breathe fundraising efforts. Molly, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to quickly just go over what we're hoping to share with you today. So I want to start out just by thanking everyone for their attendance and talk a little bit about some fundraising basics, and then talking more specifically about the fundraising ask. We've come up with 5 steps which we feel like can really help you get close that gap between kind of maybe where you are right now of not necessarily knowing how and where to get started and really how to start asking for those donations. And then we'll talk a little bit about team participation for those of you who are thinking about joining a team or thinking about creating a team. We'll talk to you a little bit about the importance of that. And then if you're on this call today and you're a team captain, we'll talk a little bit about the important role that you play. And then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the fundraising support that we have to offer you. And then we will leave this call with some immediate next steps, because if we've done our job right today, then we will have, as Jackie said, given you the confidence to really get started or to continue with your fundraising, because it's so important to the organization and to what we are trying to do in terms of doubling the lung cancer survival rate in the next 10 years. So a few reminders: the session today is being recorded and all attendees are on mute. So we can't hear you, but the great thing is that we have a chat panel that you are able to submit questions throughout the presentation. I'll actually remind you a couple points throughout today's webinar to submit those as they come up, and we will do our best to answer those at the end. And any that we're not able to answer, we will follow up with you at the after the webinar has completed within the next few days. So I want to start out just by saying thank you. Thank you for your time of being on today's webinar. Thank you for your commitment to helping those affected by lung cancer. Thank you for your commitment to the organization. We are very grateful for the work that you do with us and for us. So thank you very much for being here today and for what you do in spreading awareness and in raising the necessary funds. We know that some people may feel like this when they think about fundraising. Some people may actually feel like this. You may be a little skeptical, you may be a little hesitant, you may have questions, you may be doubtful, but maybe there's some people on the line who look like this, who are literally jumping for joy and who are very, very excited about fundraising and feel really comfortable and confident and excited about it. Regardless of where you fall on that spectrum of pretty satisfied and secure with it or kind of questioning it and needing a little bit of help or just ready to get going, We know that you're here because the world needs you, and we want to remind you that the world needs you, and the place that you have in really helping bring this movement forward is so important. So we just wanted to remind you of that very simple fact that the world needs you and we need you. You're also likely here because you know that registering is the first step. Signing up for a Free to Breathe event or being involved with the organization, registering is the first step that you can take. So thank you for doing that. But the next thing is fundraising, and that is really where we're able to see the most amount of impact and make the biggest difference. So if you've been here and you've already signed up for an event, thank you. If you're wondering what your next step is, well, we're here to tell you that fundraising is what that next step is. I think it's really important to be able to connect what you're doing as far as fundraising to what we're trying to accomplish. And so I wanted to share a little bit with you just in terms of giving you a little bit of context and a little bit of confidence in knowing that the fundraising dollars that are raised by people just like you, as Jackie had mentioned, will help us double our overall 5-year lung cancer survival rate in the U.S. That is the ambitious goal that we are dedicated to meeting, and this is a very important role that you all play in making that happen. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for doing your part to help make that possible. I want to start off talking a little bit about fundraising basics. I know that everybody kind of comes with their own experience and some of their own comfort level in fundraising in general. So I'm going to start off just kind of at the ground level here. So what is fundraising? This is the actual definition of fundraising. It's the organized activity or an instance of soliciting money or pledges as for charitable organizations or political campaigns. So there are many different ways to fundraise. Some of you may think of these things when you think of fundraising. Maybe you consider a change jar, or you think of someone who's selling lemonade as a way to fundraise, or someone who just writes a check, big or small, as a way of fundraising. And for some of us, it means getting dressed up in fancy clothes and going to a gala and maybe writing a check or being part of a silent auction at something like that. But these are some of the different visuals that we know can be conjured up for people when they think about fundraising. So these are all different ways in which you can fundraise. Traditionally, fundraising for a lot of us has been, I'm interested in an organization, and so I sit down and I write a check and I give that donation directly to the organization. And this is really kind of the one-to-one relationship just between the donor and the organization. So the organization sends an appeal and the donor writes a check. But what we're realizing is that the organizations can't do it alone, and there's been a really big change, especially with, and it's not a recent introduction, but with the introduction of events and event fundraising. And we call this peer-to-peer fundraising. And what you'll see here is that there's a layer that's been built in between the organization and the donor, and that's the participant. And in peer-to-peer fundraising, beyond just making a donation, people just like you become advocates for the organization. And you may make a donation or you may register for an event, and then you ask other people to make a donation. And this is really it's a very important way for us to help grow the organization and to build upon the interest that already exists. And as I said, you are really key to this. You are the ones who are helping connect us to those donors and to getting more people who are knowledgeable and informed about the organization. So yeah, this is what fundraising is. It's the organized activity or an instance of soliciting money for pledges as for charitable organizations or political campaigns. And that's a really important role that all of you play with this. So now what? Now you know what the definition of fundraising is. Can you go out and conquer it? Maybe not, but what I would say to you is the key to fundraising is pretty simple, and I'm going to be coming back to this pretty often throughout the webinar, is you just need to ask. The biggest thing about fundraising is you need to be willing to ask. You need to ask people for their support. You need to be able to ask people to make a donation. When we talk to other people about their efforts with fundraising, what we've learned is that the primary reason that people do not give, it's pretty simple. It's just because they're not asked. So just remember that our job here as fundraisers isn't to make assumptions for people and to determine whether someone can or can't support something, but our job is literally to ask. And I think that that's something I mean, as Jackie mentioned, I've been doing this for 10 years, so my comfort level in asking for donations from people is pretty high. But what I have learned throughout my 10 years that's very consistent is that you need to start from a place of being willing to ask. And I promise you, you'll always be surprised by what happens. The other thing in terms of kind of these general rules with fundraising and what you can do to kind of take it to the next step is you need to make it easy for people. And what's great about fundraising for Free to Breathe is we have the Fundraising Success Center, and so you have the ability to personalize that. We can also set you up with a specific fundraising URL that links back easily to your Fundraising Success Center and where you want to direct people to make donations. We also are in a time where social media can play a really large role in fundraising. For myself in particular, I write letters. That's what I do. I write letters and direct people back to my Fundraising Success Center. And from there, I'm really able to kind of tell people why it is that I'm doing this and why it's important. But what I've learned is to just make it easy for people. I need to direct them to where I want them to go to make a donation. So again, a lot of this is just finding what works for you and what is easy for you. The other thing is you really need to get personal. The one question that everybody needs to be able to answer is, why is this event important to you? This is a picture of my father, who I lost almost 9 years ago at the very end of August. My reason for fundraising is my father, and that's very personal for me, and I'm able to connect with the people who want to love and support me by letting them know that this is important to me because I don't want other people to live without their father. And so this is personal for me, and I'm comfortable telling people that. It helps me honor my father, and it also helps other people recognize that this is something that's important to me. So it's something that I know from working with people over the years in terms of what their varying comfort levels are and sharing their specific reasons for doing it. Some people are comfortable with that and some people aren't. But I promise you that the more comfortable you get in sharing your personal reasons, the more connected someone can be to why this is important to you. The other thing is, don't make assumptions about your donors. And I love this picture because it's able to kind of get the point across perfectly. There are 3 things that I would say in terms of not making assumptions about your donors. You never want to assume who will donate. You never want to assume how much they will donate. And you never want to assume what someone's connection is to lung cancer. One of my the donation that has always stood out the most to me in the many years that I've been doing event fundraising and participating in events myself was a $5 donation that I got from a friend who I know really didn't have $5 to give me. But what it meant to me knowing how much he wanted to support me was better than a $5,000 donation. Would I have wanted a $5,000 donation? Of course I would. But I knew that it was really important to him to show his support for me. The other thing is, you never know who your top donor will be. I think one of the things, as I said before, is that you will continually be surprised throughout your experience with fundraising. I've found that the people who you think have the most to give are generally not your larger donors, and the people, again, who really kind of don't have a lot to give, they're sometimes the people who have this stuff set aside in their budget. So again, it's never making assumptions for what you think people can and cannot give. And I think we have this amazing opportunity through what we're doing to learn more about people. I oftentimes, through my experiences asking people for money for the various causes that I support, I often learn about how other people are impacted by these causes that I never would have known about if I didn't open up the conversation by asking for them to support my fundraising efforts. Have a fundraising plan. I think we all know that if you know how you're going to get from point A to point B, it's going to be easier to get there. So what does your fundraising plan look like? Is it that you're going to do a fundraising event? Is it that you're going to do a silent auction? Is it that you've decided that you're going to sit down and write a letter and ask 50 people for $50 in 50 days? the idea here is just that you're giving some thought exactly to how it is that you want to raise the money, and then you're going to go about accomplishing that. And then the most important thing, it's very simple. You just need to get started. I know for myself, and I know from working with a lot of other event fundraisers over the years, that once you get started, it's so much easier to continue down that process. And once you start getting those donations, it really helps boost your confidence. And so my biggest piece of advice is to just make sure that you get started, because once you do, it's really going to help you continue that momentum. Here's some specific fundraising ideas that we have. Then some maybe you've thought of, some maybe you haven't. Some may work for your specific situation, some may not. But we wanted to be sure to leave you all with some specific fundraising ideas that you could start. Put up a poster at work. This helps us accomplish two things. One, it helps get more awareness out there for the event, but it also sets the stage that you're fundraising for an event. So is there an area at work in which you can put up a poster to ask for donations? For some of you who may not be as comfortable asking people for donations, ask for them in lieu of birthday gifts. That may be a more comfortable ask for you than a one-to-one ask. Collect your spare change and turn it into a donation. I don't know about you guys, but I literally have a pretty big vase in my bedroom, and my husband and I just throw our change in there. And I know that I probably have about $75 worth of change in there. So that's another option. Host a fundraising event. I just attended a fundraising event a couple weeks ago, and the person who I went to the fundraising event for, Paula, she raised over $1,000 in that one day with her fundraising event. She had a little area set up for a silent auction. She also had a specific area set up with gift baskets that she had reached out to businesses in her local community to get them to help support her by donating items. And she was able to reach her fundraising goal in one day. So that's another option. Another thing is you can ask a restaurant to donate a portion of their proceeds. Where I live, there's a Mexican restaurant that does this. There's also a Chinese restaurant that does this. So it just takes, again, being willing to ask, that theme that I talked about at the beginning. It just takes asking the people in your community to support you, or these restaurants to support you. One of the things also that I say specifically about fundraising is that you're only limited by your imagination, because you can do anything to raise money. Obviously, we all have certain parameters that we need to stay within, but you really are only limited by your imagination, and these are just a handful of things that you can do to kind of generate some ideas. Another thing that I would want to say is just remember that fundraising is a gift. When we were talking a little bit about the content for this webinar and the different kinds of fundraisers that we encounter, whether they're people who are fine with fundraising or some people who just, I think one of the things that I hear over and over again is, I just don't like asking for money. And if you fall in that camp of someone who's just not comfortable asking for money, I'd like you to consider this. You're providing people who know and love you with an opportunity to support something that's important to you. I know from myself, from being personally impacted by cancer in multiple ways within my family, that you oftentimes feel helpless when someone you love has been affected by lung cancer. And what you are doing is you're giving someone an opportunity to show their support for a way that they've been limited. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing is you're giving someone the opportunity to be a part of groundbreaking treatments and research that can save someone's life. We know how important the work is that we're doing with these groundbreaking treatments and research, and the funds are going to help directly impact the work that we can do in that area. And I touched on this a little bit, but you also get to share your story and increase awareness for lung cancer, which I think most of us on this call likely know, or you will know, that this is something that needs exposure, and it's severely underfunded, which is why we're doing what we're doing. It's really important that you're also able to get out there and speak to why you're doing this and why it's important, and it really helps kind of tie back everything that we're doing. So you get that opportunity to honor the people in your life in a really impactful way as well. So I'm going to pause for just a second and remind everyone that there's the chat feature in which you can ask questions if any have come up at this point. All right. So at this point, we've talked a little bit about the fundraising basics and why it's important and how you can make it easy. And let's take it to the next step, and let's talk specifically about how you can start asking people for money. We've outlined 5 steps that can help you craft an ask, and we also have specific asks that we have included in here for you to make it really easy to just take that next step. So what does your ask want to include? It should include identifying the need that you are trying to address, explain why this is important, share what you're going to be doing about it, ask your donor to take a specific action, and then stop talking and listen for objections. So on this first step here, identify the need you are trying to address. Lung cancer claims more lives than breast, colon, and prostate cancer combined. Why is this important? As someone who has lost a loved one to this disease, I know firsthand what lung cancer can take from a family. So what are you going to do about it? So I'm participating in and fundraising for the Athens Free to Breathe event because I want to fund research that will help families have more time with their loved ones. Ask your donor to take a specific action. Will you help by giving a gift of $50 today? And then stop talking. This is where you have the ability to listen for objections and to be able to identify how you can help someone. Maybe someone doesn't have $50. That's fine. Donate what you can. Maybe they have $50, but they can't give it to you all at once. That's fine. They have options for how they want to make a donation to you. Maybe now is just not the right time. That's fine. Can they support you by passing along your fundraising request to their friends and family? But taking this moment to kind of stop talking and listen for the objections, it allows you with the ability to really help direct the outcome. So let's look at that particular ask altogether. Lung cancer claims more lives than breast, colon, and prostate cancer combined. As someone who has lost a loved one to this disease, I know firsthand what lung cancer can take from a family. So I'm participating in and fundraising for the Athens Free to Breathe event because I want to fund research that will help families have more time with their loved ones. Will you help by giving a gift of $50 today? So this strings together all of those 5 steps, and I think you can see here we're really trying to connect your specific reason for doing this to the event and to how someone can specifically help you. So here's an ask. If you're a team participant, this is a different type of an ask. 1 in 14 people are diagnosed with lung cancer. When we think about the number of people we have on Team Molly, that statistic hits too close to home. That's why we're participating in and fundraising for the Athens Free to Breathe event on November 16th. Will you support us by making a $50 donation today? Also, let us know if you're interested in learning more about the event. We'd love to have you join our team. I like this because we're always looking for ways to grow the event and to get more people on board. So as a team participant, I feel like we all share in that responsibility of being able to help grow the team. So this is able to accomplish that as well. This is kind of from the perspective of another ask of if you have a loved one who has been diagnosed with lung cancer. Lung cancer makes everyday tasks seem insurmountable. Watching my loved one go through this after being diagnosed with lung cancer has spurred me into action. I'm participating in and fundraising for the Athens Free to Breathe event because I want to raise money for essential research, treatments, and advocacy programs. Will you help by giving a gift of $50 today? And I think in this specific ask, you know, we left it a little generic of watching my loved one. You know, you'd want to put the name of the person who you're honoring or who you're celebrating or who you're participating for, again, to help make this more personal for you and to connect it more strongly to the people who you're asking for support from. And then the last one here is if you're a lung cancer survivor. As a lung cancer survivor, I know how critical research is to furthering treatment advancements. Unfortunately, research for this disease is severely underfunded. So I'm participating in and fundraising for the Athens Free to Breathe event to ensure there are more lung cancer survivors. Will you help by giving a gift of $50 today? Now, all of these asks have a baseline of $50. You know, a rule of fundraising is that you need to ask for something that's comfortable for you, but I would always recommend that you stretch yourself a little bit further than you think you're comfortable being in. No one will ever give you more money than they're able to give. But I think if you set that bar at a specific limit, people will donate less if that's what they can give, but oftentimes people will give what you ask for, and sometimes people will give more if they have that ability to do that. So I talked a little bit about these 5 specific asks, but what are some of the elements that are common throughout all of those asks? Well, first of all, it has a question mark. So we are literally asking someone a question. You don't want to kind of hem and haw, like, you know, if you think you can do it, maybe. No, that's not a fundraising ask. I would like to ask you for a donation of $50 today to support a cause that's really important to me and has impacted my family personally. That is the ask. You want to make sure that it's strong, that you're making no room there about whether there's an action that you want people to take. So have that question mark there. It's specific. Again, as I said, I use $50 as a baseline, but I think we all need to come up with what we're comfortable with. But asking people for a specific amount of money, I guarantee you, you will most likely see more donations of the type from the size that you ask for. I did an event earlier this year that I raised money for. I asked for $50, and $50 was the most common size of donation that I got. So I think that that's something important for you to keep in mind. Oftentimes that seed that you plant is, again, what will kind of grow the tallest among your donation requests. It's spoken. Again, it's not, you're not making assumptions for people. You're not kind of shying away from giving people this opportunity to support you. You're actually saying this out loud to other people and giving them the opportunity to support you or not. And it's authentic for you. And this is super important because we all have specific reasons why we're taking the time to be on this webinar or to listen to it later. And it's because we're personally impacted by this in a way that has that's spurred us into action to fundraise on behalf of everyone who's affected by lung cancer. You have a specific reason, and so you need to make sure that when you're asking people for money that that reason comes out, because that's what's going to help make it authentic for you. I'll leave you kind of in this section just with this parting thought. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which, you know, in the event fundraising world, it's the same thing as saying you get money when you ask for it, and you don't get money when you don't ask for it. I think, you know, the worst thing that someone can do is say no, and the great thing is that you can move on to the next person. Again, if there are questions, I know that some have come through at this point, so just continue sending in those questions and we'll answer them at the end here. If you are thinking about joining a team, if you're thinking about creating a team, if you're already on a team, I want to just run through a couple of points here. First is belonging to a team makes participants feel more accountable for their individual fundraising. So in my work as an event fundraiser, I have seen time and time again in the various events that I've worked on and supported, and also the events that I have personally participated in, this is true. You have the ability to really feel more accountable for your participation and for your individual fundraising when you're on a team. And it's just because you have other people who are relying on you and who are there to help encourage you. A team participant with support from a team captain is also more likely to show up on event day. So again, you have someone who's there who's checking in on you, who's making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, and having that kind of accountability again and that sort of support from someone not just within the organization, but from someone else who's really invested in the cause and invested in your participation really helps ensure that someone will show up on event day. The great thing about being on a team is that you have each other to be able to lead, to motivate, to inspire. You can lean on each other for that, to ensure that you show up on event day, to ensure that you fundraise. I take spin class, and a quote that my spin instructor said within the past couple of months that really resonated with me, especially within the event fundraising world, is you never know who it is that you're inspiring. And you know, I think about that a lot in the context of fundraising, and what you do as an event participant, as an event fundraiser, can really inspire other people to show up. And so just think about that as you go about in your participation. You know, there are things that you're doing that you're probably not even aware of that are really making people get more excited and more inspired to show up on an event and to fundraise. There's also strength in numbers. We know that this is a more fun experience for people when they're on a team and when they are with other people. And the great thing about the events that we put on is that, you know, regardless of whether you're on a team or not, you are surrounded by all of those people. So whether you're on a team or not, you're going to have a great experience. But we know that there's something different when you are part of a team. We couldn't be as successful without our team captains. We also know that very, very pointedly. So a quick thank you and heartfelt thank you to anyone on the webinar who's listening later who is a team captain. The work that you do above and beyond just being a general participant helps us be even more successful. So thank you so much for that role that you play. As a team captain, you may be thinking, well, what can I do? Well, it's going to go back to what we started at the beginning. You need to ask your teammates to fundraise. As a team captain, we have the ability to really be able to influence behavior of the people who are on our team, and this is a really great first step. Ask your teammates to fundraise. Similarly to what I said at the beginning of the webinar in terms of why people don't donate, it's because they're not asked. Oftentimes people don't fundraise because they weren't asked to. And while we as an organization are really trying to make that more front and center in the work that we do, it really also helps to have that reinforcement from the team captains and to be setting that expectation with team participants. So that is one thing that you can do. Ask your teammates to fundraise. Another thing is set a good example by getting your own fundraising underway. I think we all know that in life in general, but especially I see it a lot amplified in the fundraising space, is that it's so much easier to encourage someone in a direction when you can tell them that you have already been where they're going. So to be able to say, I have already started my fundraising, I promise you it's a lot easier than I thought that it would be, is a lot more powerful if you have actually already started your fundraising. So that's one thing that you can do as well. I also mentioned how being on a team makes people feel more accountable and showing up on events. Checking in on your team's progress is a really great thing that as a team captain you can do to ensure that people show up. It's always good to know that there's someone who's watching you and that there's someone who is really counting on you to be there, and checking in on your team's progress from the point that someone registers until the point that they show up on events really will help ensure that they show up and make sure that people are successful. Another thing you can do is create a team challenge. There are lots of different ways in which you can do this in terms of asking people to fundraise. Maybe you want to try to do, just even for bragging rights, see who can get the most donations in a single day or in a single week. There are a lot of different ways in which you can do this, and again, I think it's important based on what your team is like and kind of what people's experiences are, but we always want to make sure that we're doing something to challenge our team a little bit. So the most important thing with participating on a team is have fun. And again, this echoes whether you're a general participant or a team participant. We want you to have fun with everything that you're doing from the time that you register until the time that you show up on events. Here are a handful of ideas specific to if you're participating as a team. Organize a team yard sale. One of the things that we've seen kind of over the years that people do is you can kind of do add-on things with a team yard sale. So one, first of all, you have the ability to get a lot of other things that people may want to donate, not just on your team, but in your neighborhood, wherever you may live and have this yard sale. You can provide other people with an opportunity to donate items to be sold at this team yard sale. You can also sell things there, whether it's setting up a little table to sell baked goods or to sell lemonade, kind of as a kickback to what we were talking about at the beginning. So that's an option. And make sure no matter what you do that you're wearing your event t-shirt or putting up some sort of a poster or a sign that lets people know where the money you raise is going. Because oftentimes what we find is that people will donate or they'll buy the items for more than you actually are ticketing them for because they know that it's going to support your fundraising efforts. Another thing that you can do is you can execute a social media challenge. So I just put up on here Team Tuesday. So maybe it's every Tuesday you're asking for $20. You're asking 10 of your friends to give you $20, or you're asking, whatever that looks like in terms of how you're utilizing social media. But there, again, are different ways in which you can do this, and it's really only limited by your imagination. Create a fundraising event and set the expectation that it will happen every year. The fundraising event that I talked about a couple of minutes ago, the woman, Paula, who puts that on, I believe that it was her 7th annual year doing that event. So I know every August that this event is going to be happening, and I always know to check in with her if I haven't gotten an invitation. I think that's also a great thing as a team that you can do, and also just as a general event participant as well. If you're doing an event, setting the expectation that it will happen every year also sets the expectation with your supporters that this is something that you're going to continue doing year after year. Another option is to host a silent auction. You can get the items donated from your community. You can ask your circle of friends and family, people who can or can't donate. That's one way in which they can help support you, is to see if they can get some items donated. And the important thing, with the silent auction is making sure that you're setting the baseline for how much something can be won for at a reasonable level, but nothing too crazy, so that people can kind of compete on that with the silent auction. But again, the goal is to make sure that that you're having this to go towards your fundraising efforts. So you don't want to set the bar at like $5. You kind of want to start that at like $25 or so, depending on the item. So those are a few options for team fundraising. And then I wanted to talk a little bit just about fundraising support. The support that we offer matches the commitment we're asking you to make. When you register, you have support from our fundraising staff who are here to help you with whatever your questions are. You're not left to your own to figure this out. We really want to make sure that you know that we're here to listen. We're here to cheer you on when you need it, to give you confidence when you feel like you're not really where you want to be. We're here to lend you a helping hand, or to provide you with that one-on-one support to ensure that you have all of the information that you need to be successful. But most importantly, our job is to make sure that you show up on events and have a really, really good time, that you're able to honor the person who you most want to do this event for. One of the things, I hope you all have our contact information, but I want to make sure that you have our phone number and you have our email address, because we'd love to make sure that you know that you can connect with our staff who really can offer this personalized fundraising support to match what will work best for you. I think what we've seen over the years, and certainly what I've seen over my course of being an event fundraiser, is that there is not one specific plan that works for everybody. We have all of the different tools that we have to offer you. As I said, specifically the Fundraising Success Center is one of the best tools that we can offer you to help you with your fundraising. But each person will use that differently, and each person has a specific reason and a specific story of why they're doing this. So, so we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to hear why you're doing this, why it's important to you, and to really help you be even more successful than you already are. There are a couple of areas here in terms of where you can get some additional fundraising support. We have some tips and resources. If you go to freetobreathe.org/fundraisingtips.html and then build a team, freetobreathe.org/buildateam.html. So those are a couple areas within the website that you can also go to, in addition to reaching out to our staff. So maybe you're wondering, I've gotten all of this information. I'm feeling more compelled now to fundraise. I feel like I can do it. I'm getting closer to knowing that I can definitely take that step. But this is what you need to do next. Log into your Fundraising Success Center and customize your personal page if you haven't already. As I said, this is going to be one of your most important fundraising tools to ensure that you can go ahead and tell people why you're doing this and why it's important to you, and to provide people with that opportunity to support you. Secure your first or next donation within 24 hours. Some of you may have already started fundraising, and thank you if you fall into that camp. And some of you may have been waiting for this opportunity to get a little more confidence and information to do that. Our challenge to you today is to get your first donation within the next 24 hours. I know you can do it. The next thing is create a fundraising plan. As I said, do you want to do a fundraising event? Is your plan just that you want to reach out to 10 people one-on-one and ask them to give you a $100 donation? Is it that you want to log into your Fundraising Success Center and customize it and reach out and get your first donation within 24 hours? What does that fundraising plan look like for you? Is it that you want to contact us for help if you don't really know how to start? I hope and I feel confident that we've given you some basic tools to feel really comfortable getting started today. But if you just still need a little more information or just want to talk things through, then contact us for help if you really kind of want some guidance on the next way to get started. We're kind of winding down the webinar now, and I want to leave you guys with a couple of thoughts. The first thing is your part matters. As I talked about in the beginning, you know, the world needs you, and everyone affected by lung cancer needs you. And so if you're thinking that you know, you're just one of many, you're not. You're a very important part of the work that we do here, and what you do on an individual basis really matters to us. This is our vision. We talked about this at the beginning, and I'll double back on it here, but this is what our vision is for 2022. We want to double the overall 5-year lung cancer survival rates in the U.S. And I would say if you're wondering who's going to make that happen, take a look in that mirror, because it's you. Regardless of how you choose to fundraise, the important thing that you need to know and leaving here with is that you can build the promise of life-saving treatments and a cure for everyone diagnosed with lung cancer. And for those of us who have been impacted personally and know, as we talked about, what lung cancer can take from a family, what you're doing with your fundraising really helps put a lot of power back into what that loss feels like and how important it is to continue the work that we're doing. So I would just end by saying thank you. I know that there are some questions that have come through, so I'm going to turn it over to Jackie to see if there are any questions before we wrap up.
Hey, Molly, thank you very, very much. I want to add just a quick note, and then, yes, we definitely have some questions. And I wanted to point out that the link that Molly shared earlier, just a few slides ago, that talked about fundraising tips and additional resources, that for those of you who have known Free to Breathe for a while and been a part of you know, the events and fundraising, we have some wonderful new resources for you. So I highly encourage you to go to that link and particularly click on the additional resources link, because there you're going to find a business card that you can use as a fundraiser. You can find a brand new team captain guide that has wonderful, wonderful, rich information about how to build your team, how to fundraise with your team, lots of ideas. And also there's a jar wrapper, which, so if you wanted to do a change jar at a restaurant or anything like that, we've got some materials like that for you. And we are working soon on a Join My Team poster that you will be able to hang up at work, which Molly had talked about earlier. So just wanted to let you know what you could find there. And then one of the questions that came in is a kind of a confirmation of something that was mentioned earlier at the beginning of the webinar, which is that for everyone in attendance, the slides, you will be sent an email with a link to the webinar. So yes, all of the information, and we'll call it notes, will be available to you. If you've got questions, additional things that you want to talk to us about, just like Molly said, please feel free to pick up the phone and call us and expand you know, your curiosity or questions or ideas based on what you see in the webinar. But Molly, yeah, we actually do have a few questions, and one of them is asking, how do you ask for a donation from the same people every year? And it says, in other words, asking friends and family for a donation for the same event year after year. So I know you mentioned fundraising events and setting the expectation that it'll come back year after year, but how to specifically ask for a donation year after year?
I'd be happy to take this, and then one of my colleagues, Eileen, is on the line, so she may have something to chime in with this. But For me, I would go back to kind of the basics of don't make assumptions. I think, one of the biggest things that I've seen kind of through my experience with fundraising is that we feel like I can't go back to the same person because there's no way I can. I've asked them for too many times. But what I've always found is that my individual reason for fundraising never changes, and someone's ability and desire to want to support the loss that I've experienced doesn't change. So I ask them. The other thing I think for those of us who are a little hesitant is there are ways in which you can ask around maybe, like I said, I just lost my father 9 years ago. It was August 26th, and when we've lost someone, there are dates that always stick out in our memories. And so maybe what you could do is you could ask on one of those kind of memory dates for people to support your fundraising efforts. And that way, again, it's a way to connect it back to your reason for participating in the event. So for me in particular, I would say, today I am recognizing the fact that I lost my father 9 years ago, and my reason for supporting this cause hasn't changed in the past 9 years. And in fact, I'm just reminded that there's more time that I have experienced in this life without him. To honor his memory and to continue the work that's so important to me, I'd ask for you to make a $50 donation for my participation in the Free to Breathe event on November 16th. So that's one way in which you could do it. And like I said, I think if you just set the stage with people that this is something that you plan on doing every year. So even if it's as simple as saying, I'm participating in Free to Breathe again. I would like to ask for your donation. I'd like for you to support me with a $50 donation. And I always think when you're signing out or when you're thanking people, you plant that seed that you will be doing the event again next year. So you're just making sure that you're setting that expectation with people that this is something that you do year after year.
Great. Thanks, Molly.
Yeah.
Going to send a couple more your way, actually. So the next question is, and if I'm understanding this correctly, and I apologize if I'm not, the participant who shared this question, if I'm not understanding it, please feel free to send a chat with a kind of a clarification. But the question says, what is the standard or average percentage response rate? I'm assuming that you're talking conversion rate, for how many asks does it take to actually then receive an actual donation. So Molly, do you have thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can say that I have never personally kind of done the math myself on that. I would need to kind of go back and check with some of my colleagues to see if that's even kind of a statistic or any sort of data that we track. But what I would say is, every no brings you closer to a yes. I also, like I talked earlier about how I participated in a fundraising event earlier this year. And one of the things that, we don't go into detail with here, but I think this question provides us with a really great doorway to kind of walk into that conversation is how important it is to follow up with people. When I fundraised for an event back in February, I, for the first time, used Facebook to fundraise, and that was really, really helpful because I was able to include a lot more people who I wouldn't normally ask kind of on a personal basis, but I also was able to tell people what my goal was, and then I was able to tell people how far away I was from my goal, and that was able to really kind of spur people on. So I think I'm not answering your question specifically because I quite frankly don't have an answer to that, but what I do want to encourage you to do is to really expand who you ask and to not limit that list to only close friends or family. The more people you can ask, the better. And I think it's also really important to remember how impactful it can be to follow up with people, because you may send something to someone at a time when they don't have time to pay attention to it. Something may get buried in their inbox, and someone who doesn't donate it doesn't necessarily mean no. It may mean I'm busy or I forgot, and they just need a little bit of a reminder. So I would just keep that in mind.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you've answered through your answer there several other questions that had come in about the use of Facebook for fundraising and the kind of, not wanting to bother people. Do you resend your request if you didn't get a donation, things like that? So thank you for kind of covering multiple questions in one.
Yeah, and Jackie, if I can kind of expand upon that. I literally participated in this event as one big experiment to kind of learn a little bit more about fundraising. And I asked some people 3 times before they actually donated to me. And, as an event fundraiser for 10 years, you may think like, well, that's what she does. That's totally fine. But it was uncomfortable for me. And I mean, I tell people, you need to step out of your comfort zone. Like, we may not be comfortable asking for money, but we need to remember that we're not asking for someone to fund something for ourselves. We're asking for something that's really important, and for this research and this treatment, and to buy more time for families. Those are really important things. And so I really stretched myself with what I did, and I did ask 3 times. And I literally did a graph chart, which only points out how much of a geek I am, but I did an Excel chart to see when my donations came in, and I always got a huge influx of donations on the days in which I sent out a request or a reminder for people who hadn't. So if you are thinking they said no by not donating, that is that's a kind of a myth that you can kind of lift off your shoulders. It may mean something else entirely. I would say a no is not a no until you've heard no.
Great. No, good. Very good points. So we're gonna keep sending them your way, Molly. So another question asks about, isn't it better to get a donation as opposed to a pledge? It's hard to collect on pledges, kind of with a question mark. Oh, is it hard to collect on pledges with a question mark?
Well, I guess I would need a little clarification in terms of, is a pledge just a promise?
That's what it sounds like from this, where versus, a donation, you're getting an outright either check or cash, at that moment in time, versus asking someone to, pledge a certain amount if you complete the event or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, quite honestly, I wouldn't recommend asking for pledges. What we're really trying to help you feel confident in doing is securing donations on the spot from people. And I think if you encounter people who, I think it's very uncommon for someone to encounter someone who says, I don't want to donate until you participate in the event. But if that's the case, then you have to kind of honor where the donor really kind of wants to be met in that. But I would say, with what we're doing with this work in this type of fundraising capacity, what you are trying to do is to secure donations and not to kind of get these pledges or these promises for donations.
Okay, thank you very much. So a couple more that I'm going to send your way here.
Sure.
Someone's asking, do I need to set a fundraising goal? And if so, what should I set it at?
Okay. So do you have to set a fundraising goal? Jackie, can you remind me if the system, does it automatically set a fundraising goal for people?
We have a suggested individual goal in there, but it's not automatically. They definitely have the ability to adjust it.
So going back to my great big fundraising experience this year, I set a fundraising goal and I met it. My goal was $5,000. And when I met it, I increased it and then continued my fundraising and met it. And then I increased it and left it at, I think my top goal was, I think, maybe $6,500. Yes, you should set a fundraising goal because I think it gives us all something to reach for. And as for what you should set it to, gosh, I really think you need to set it to something that's comfortable for you. What's comfortable for me, I mean, I have a twin sister, and what's comfortable for her is $250, and I've finally gotten her to realize that she can get way more than that. So I've gotten her to the point where she, over the course of a few years, where she's comfortable setting her fundraising goal at $2,000. But a fundraising goal, especially when there is a suggested fundraising minimum, is something that's really individual to you. and to what you want to do. I always say, I mean, I don't want to say the higher the better, but again, we want to encourage you to challenge yourself and to stretch yourself a little bit. So I also think that that's a really good conversation, kind of one-on-one, so we can talk a little bit about your connection to the cause, your comfort level with fundraising, what you want to do to fundraise to be able to answer that question more specifically. So whoever answered that question, I would definitely recommend calling or emailing us. Or if you want to leave your contact information or just say, yes, please contact me, we can reach out to you directly to answer that question specifically.
Okay, and so I want to be conscious of time. I'd love to throw one more question your way, and then I think we'll wrap up. Sure. And for everyone, please do know, again, Molly encouraged it, if you have additional questions or we didn't get to your question on the call, we will reach out to you and address your question, and or feel free to call us and we'll have conversations together. But this last question, Molly, before we wrap up, is, in your opinion, is it better to ask through email, in person, or over the phone?
So the great thing about fundraising is that it's very individual. And so I know I cannot ask my grandparents, who would be happy to support me, for a donation over email unless I never want to get it. So I would need to pick up the phone and call them and ask them for a donation. I know most of my friends, I don't call them one-on-one. I send them a letter. So what I need to do in terms of, and this goes back to what I said of, you know, you need to put together a fundraising plan. I figure out who I'm asking and how I'm asking them, because it's not the same for everybody. I also think sometimes the size of the donation that you're asking for can sometimes dictate how you choose to, which avenue you choose to take for that. If I were going to ask someone for a $1,000 donation, I would try to get together with them in person if we lived in the same place, or at the very least I would pick up the phone and call them, because that's a different type of ask. So I would say think about your donor and what would work well for them. Okay,
wonderful. Well, thank you, Molly. I appreciate all of your wisdom and absolutely wonderful presentation full of insight, tips, steps to amazing fundraising success.
Sure.
And I want to say thank you to each of you who joined us for the webinar today, for every ounce of energy, heart, and soul that you'll be putting into fundraising for Free to Breathe, the lung cancer movement, and helping each individual and family impacted by this disease. We truly can't wait to see your remarkable fundraising results. I really hope that you found today's presentation useful. And again, you can download the full presentation, including audio, from the email that is sent to you. And feel free to contact us with questions and curiosities. We're incredibly happy to help. And finally, thank you for helping turn the vision of doubling lung cancer survival into a reality. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.